Looking for a cosmic adventure like no other? Zatswan, Multiversal Guardian is a high-stakes comic book journey through the multiverse with stunning art and an unforgettable hero. Get your copy today in ebook and paperback formats. Link in the description.
Hello everybody, this is Neil Allen, the creator of Zatswan Multiversal Guardian, the cosmic fantasy comic series. You can pick up the 130-page graphic novel, Zatswan Multiversal Guardian, on Amazon.com. The link for that will be in the description below, and I am currently working on Zatswan right now. So the other day I did like a rambly video where I was talking actually about Sean James, this other author, and how he had a heart attack, and I was talking about how I was stuck inside quite a bit because of the fires in the area I'm in, you know, making the air not pleasant to breathe. And I thought actually that was a pretty interesting format. So I'm going to continue with it while I work on Zatswan here. Just ramble about some of the things that I'm thinking about. And one of the things that I saw online actually was about this upcoming lantern show. Somebody mentioned how like people are wanting it to fail. See, if you're not in the know, James Gunn, basically the mastermind behind DC's current movie and television universe, has come out and said that Lanterns is a John Stewart story, even though it stars both John Stewart and Hal Jordan. And so it's mainly going to be John Stewart's story. So what I think that I think it's safe to say that John Stewart and his fans have essentially won this great Green Lantern war that's been going on. See, let me explain that to you. For those who don't know, and for those who do, I guess it'll be kind of a trip down memory lane. And again, this is going to be another rambly video, and these rambly videos are probably going to be quite long. I guess they kind of help me pass the time while I'm doing my comic book inking. So I hope they're enjoyable for you, and they're not going to be there's not going to be any editing. And I'm probably going to be doing a lot of meandering, just so you know, because I am largely focused on my artwork here. So, and I am almost done with the inking on this current page. I started the inking in the last video about Sean James and the heart attack, and I'm nearly done with this page. There's still a bit more to do. A little bit more. But it's come quite along, and I'm happy with it. So we'll get to the coloring once the inking is done. Just adding in some finishing touches here. Working on the hair on this character. So I'm working on the Zatswan Multiversal Guardian, as I mentioned, is out. You can purchase it on Amazon.com, and I hope you do. The ebook is very accessible. It's very cheaply priced. It's only $2.99, so you should pick that up. Don't be a cheapskate. $2.99, I'm sure, you know, that's not a big ask. Most people could afford that. And I priced it that way because I wanted it to be affordable for people. I wanted it to be accessible. I wanted them to be able to read it. Comics are so expensive these days. And, you know, it's pretty outrageous that DC and Marvel charge like $5.99 for a digital comic. See, the thing about a digital comic, I think most people understand this, but I'll just explain it anyway. Once you have the file, it just sits there and it's like gravy. You know what I mean? You don't have to produce anything anymore. You don't have to make anything. You don't have to ship anything. You don't have to print anything. It's just there and it's always going to be there for you. So, there's no, good reason to price for the consumer to price that so high, to price it at like $4.99, for a digital version of it. And even the print copies of the books are still too expensive, but the digital one, that's just egregious. So I just priced mine real low. But let's get back to lanterns. Yeah, so John Stewart and his fans, I would say, won this great Green Lantern war, which has been going on since about 2015 or so, 2014, 2015. See, it started when the Zack Snyder version of the DC Universe was getting underway. When the announcement of, I think, well, we all knew Justice League was coming. Man of Steel had come out, and there was going to be Batman v Superman, and obviously there was going to be a Justice League. So the question then became, who is going to be the Green Lantern on the Justice League? Well, of course, Hal Jordan fans kind of see it this way. There's a lot of entitlement that goes along with it, too. Oh, well, naturally, Green Lantern has to be Hal Jordan because Green Lantern just has to be Hal Jordan, right? Like, it just has to be that way, right? And then there were people like me who are like the John Stewart fans, and were like, wait a minute, Hal Jordan already had his time up to bat, when he had that 2011 film, Green Lantern in 2011, which was a super duper bomb, lost somewhere in the ballpark for Warner Brothers of $90 million, which I've mentioned in past episodes, or past videos, I'm sorry. And I'm like, well, I think you're going to want a palate cleanser from that. See, Green Lantern is not one of these properties like Superman or Batman, where everybody knows what it is, and there have been all these different things, through the generations that, keep the property alive for people. No, like Green Lantern, a lot of people did not know what that was, and there aren't all these frames of references for people. Like, so, okay, if you're going to do a Green Lantern movie again, you haven't proven to the overall audience, to the culture, that of the merits of the Green Lantern property, So what a lot of people will think about it is what they've seen, which is like the Justice League cartoon show featuring John Stewart, as well as the 2011 film, like Hal Jordan movie. So a lot of people had a problem with the 2011 movie because it starred Hal Jordan to begin with, and they were familiar with John Stewart from the cartoon shows, and they're not really in the know. They're like, wow, you took one of the only black superheroes and turned him white? What? Really bad optics, But that just kind of went to show the reach of the Justice League cartoon show. Now, it's not something that you want to underestimate. And Warner Brothers underestimated it. They thought they can put out this Hal Jordan film and, nobody would bat a lash at this. And some people did. Like, how many people did, we don't really know for sure, but some people obviously did. And it's a pretty thick line there. So I was like, because I took part in quite a bit of the critical battles of this Green Lantern War. Um, I was like, well, I think that they should use the John Stewart version of Green Lantern because it gives them the opportunity for a palate cleanser to kind of move away from the 2011 film, that starred Hal Jordan. Plus, there are a lot of people who wanted to see John Stewart anyway. Like me, for example. And it just made sense. The Hal Jordan movie didn't work out well. You want to do Green Lantern again, but you want to move away from that. Well, use John Stewart. And a lot of people felt like, well, you should have used John Stewart in the first place. And of course, Hal Jordan fan, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them just could not I don't know, like could not understand is the right way to look at that, but they did not want to understand that it's Green Lantern, it has to be Hal Jordan. The comic books say that John Stewart is an inconsequential character. So why would you do that if you want all the best Green Lantern stories? You gotta do Hal Jordan. Like nothing else makes any kind of sense. That was the way that was their perspective and they saw the world. And I've said this before at different times. Like the thing about me is I don't agree with all these different perspectives, but I understand them. I understand why people have them. And the thing that I noticed, like with like a lot of these like Hal Jordan fans, is that they didn't. This seemed to be a consistent thing, and I don't want to like say everybody is like this, but they didn't even seem to understand that other perspectives existed. They only thought that their worldview was the worldview. And I am actually going to do some, identity stuff here. Part of it, I think, when you're like a mixed person like I am, I think that's just, it comes with the territory. Like, because the interesting thing is, like, a lot of people do not, that they don't have your perspective. That's kind of a given, they don't. And they don't even know what your perspective is. So I'm kind of used to understanding better than some people that, these other perspectives are a thing. Even if they are not, yours. Like, I understand them. I understand why people think that way. And, so, yeah, their perspective was that, oh, well, it has to be Hal Jordan, right? That's the only thing that makes any kind of sense. And, I was like, no, not really. It should be John Stewart. And of course, that is going to cause, though that is where like the Green Lantern Wars like really came into effect, because the thing about it is like, I wasn't saying that just because it's my personal preference. Like it should be John Stewart because I just like John Stewart and I want to see John Stewart. Yeah, there's some of that in there. If I don't want to see John Stewart, I never would have said that thing. And the thing is, like, I'm not the only person who said this. A lot of people did. The thing is, it just made sense. You know what I mean? I think that's the big thing. It just made sense. And these, when you're dealing with fans, sense is not like a thing that matters all the time, because being a fan is like an emotional response. It's not necessarily a logical one. You know, we're fans of stuff because we become emotionally attached to it. So I was like, okay, this just makes sense for it to be John Stewart because of the reasons that I've already touched on. It's like, people already wanted to see the character. The character was already like recognized and liked. And you're going to want a palate cleanser from that movie that didn't go over well, the 2011 film. But, you know, that's still a tall order. That's still a tall order. And I realized it, and I actually think I'm not going to act like, I'm not going to sit here and say that we fans and the character like won something huge. Well, you know what? I don't want to like discredit, like I don't want to downplay what happened, you know, because characters like John Stewart, the Green Lantern, and characters like him being downplayed is like something that a lot of people love to do to them. It was quite a fight, but it was a fight worth having, and I think it was a more important fight than it actually seems on the surface. You know, like we're just talking about comic books and, you know, characters and stuff like that. And I understand that, but I am going to talk about some of the stuff that might be a little less comfortable to some people. Not everybody, but to some people it will be. And of course, that is the whole topic of like representation and like the fight or struggle for that, you know, and also just fairness as well, you know. So, and the thing was like, this was a fight. This wasn't just, oh, that makes sense, like, so do this. It's like, no, these people were not gonna let go of that easily. You know what I mean? Now, was it just like, I think that's one of the things that I want to kind of consider here. Like, was this just fan stuff, or was there more at play? Was there kind of a deeper social issue at play here? And I think the answer is yes, there was a deeper thing at play here, but it was just a lot of fan stuff too. But see, now we gotta like, what are the optics of all of this stuff? So the optics are, and they don't look good, if DC just continued with Hal Jordan again. It would look like, to some people, undoubtedly, I'm not saying the world was going to blow up because of this, but, you know, what it would look like is the black guy is going to he gets passed over again when he succeeds. Now, the white character can fumble the ball, and stuff's still just going to go to the white character again and again, even when the white character fumbles, and the black character is just never going to get a shot up to bat. That's what it kind of looks like optically. That's like what's going on here. Now, some people aren't going to see it that way. I know my nails look a bit long here. I'm going to give you like a disclaimer. I play the guitar and I use the nails on my right hand to play. Like the nails on my left hand are a lot shorter, so it's kind of like by intent that, you know, my nails are a bit longer on my right hand. I just thought I would interject that because you're seeing a lot of my hands in these videos. So okay, so that's kind of what it looks like, honestly. And first of all, just optically, it's not gonna. That is a factor. Just the We're just adding some shading on this panel here. We got this tesseract here, which is shooting out light. So it's going to be, we want this area to be more in shadows, and we can do that with color, and we will. But I've decided lately with Zatswan to depend quite a bit on line. So I want to get these darker portions in with some hatching, some ink work. And as you're seeing, like this, like technical drawing pin, you would call it, it gives a much different line. That's why I don't ink everything with this pen, or with pins like these. Like I have like a bunch of pins. Like these are very common microns. My favorite type of pin like this is actually Marvi Uchida's Le Pin. It's like French. These are my favorite technical drawing pins, but I'm just using microns right now. They give a very predictable and very boring line, which is good for certain things like panel borders, and if you just need to use like a good straight line, but they don't have they will not give the same type of line as you will see like the brush work I used here, or a dip pen. So they kind of have their place. A lot of they're easier to use. Like using the brush takes a lot more control and a lot more skill. The technical drawing pin is kind of they're cool. They're good for what they do. They're a little more boring though, and sometimes boring is good when you just need a boring line. But so yeah, honestly, we can't get away from like those like optics are a thing, and it's a thing that a corporation that's trying to appeal to an audience should consider. You know, just optically, how does your thing look? How does the situation look? And also, it's not just about optics and social justice. Why John Stewart was such a compelling option was because, again, he made sense. And I'm actually proud of Warner Brothers for seeing that and not just caving into, you know, these like some of these like angrier fans on the issue. And about the fans, like I understand they like what they like and they just want to see what they want to see. I get that. You know, like I can understand that. Like, you know, I'm a fan too, and I think you know, like we all just want to see what we want to see. Another thing too is like it's not just, and the thing is like it isn't just a quote unquote social justice issue. It's just an economics and capitalism issue. It's like if you already have like that Superman, and you already have Superman and Batman, you already have that white guy base like covered pretty well. Like you're not gonna, a Hal Jordan is not gonna get over Superman and Batman with those people because he just never will. So the thing about it though is if you do have a John Stewart, the black character, the Black Green Lantern, but what I'm saying is like for the white people, Superman, Hal Jordan's not going to get above Superman and Batman because he never has, and he's not going to. The thing about it though is if you give the black people like a good character, like John Stewart, their whole guy is going to be John Stewart. Their guy's not going to be Superman and Batman. It's going to be Green Lantern. You know what I mean? So it just makes sense. Like a Cyborg, the Teen Titans character, is not going to fulfill that for like the black audience or the black male audience. He's just not. He's not equipped to do that. And acting like he will. Okay, so here's the thing, like, if Warner Brothers wants to succeed, you can't look at this like a fan, like a Jeff Johns or a Mark Waid or one of these guys is just going to look at it like, oh, we can just say that Cyborg will be that black representation on the team, and, you know, that'll be good enough, and we can just use Hal Jordan. Okay, here's the folly in that. You can't, if you want to succeed at appealing to that demographic, you can't act like, you have to try to, you just have to see things from the point of view of that demographic, not what you would like for things to be from the point of view of that demographic. Does that make sense? And the thing about appealing to that demographic is when we look at things like the Black Panther movie, and we look at things like Get Out, and we look at things like the recent movie that came out, Sinners. Okay, if you put out something that demographic wants to buy, they can show up in droves and buy it. But you have to be putting out something that they actually want. Let's get this hatching in here, add some shading back here. So we're just adding some finishing touches here. So it's because I say that because a lot of people have been comfortable with this idea that if you put out something that's meant to, you know, appeal to a black demographic or feature black characters in good roles, it won't sell. There's no market for that. Nobody wants to see that. I don't think that was ever true, honestly. I think that certain decision makers have wanted that to be the case and just acted upon things like it was the case. But I'm skeptical if it ever really was the case, or if that was just like racial bias and people using their own biases and coming up with reasons to justify their biases. You know, I think that may have been what was actually really going on there. Not that that was ever the case. You make things that'll have black characters in good roles and feature them well, and nobody's going to want to buy it. Not true. I mean, there will be some people who don't want to buy it, but there will be other people who do. So let's just add in some more shading around here. Okay, this panel's coming together pretty well. I don't know if there's anything more I want to do in this panel here. The rest we might be able to do with just color. And we're coming down to where I might just want to... We're coming pretty close to the coloring. Now, yeah, if you watched that last video, the Sean James one, then you saw me working on a lot of this. So this is kind of where things are at on the page now. So about like the decision to go with John Stewart, the Green Lantern, that's what we're talking about. And some of my thoughts are probably going to be pretty scattered. Like, I'm not going to worry too much about editing this. Like I said, these thoughts are just what they are, you know, and I hope you get something out of it. I mean, I do. I kind of like doing this talking while working on my comic. Okay, so what I want to do here is I'm going to want some of these buildings to be kind of more up front and some in back. So what I think I'm going to do is go over some of them, give some of them kind of a once over with a bolder pen. This architecture stuff I tend to use I tend to use technical drawing pens on like this stuff here. Okay, so on buildings and architecture and things like that. Okay, so basically, yeah, I was talking about how John Stewart won these Green Lantern wars that went on in the mid 20 teens or whatever you want to call that period of time, or they've been going on, like for uh and I think it was quite a victory for diversity in superhero fiction, and I do think that's important. I like, yeah, we're talking about just these characters and stuff and these superheroes, but I think that's very important. I don't want to like treat that like it's frivolous. I think it was important, and it was quite a fight. Like they weren't going to hand that over easily. It was quite a fight, and I think that if people didn't, I don't know, you can't say for sure. I do think that the groundswell of fandom that said, "Hey, no, I think it's John Stewart's time, and I'd rather see John Stewart." I think that played a big, um, I think it played a part in Warner Brothers deciding to go with John Stewart as, the main character in this upcoming show. Uh, it's probably very easy for them to default back to Hal Jordan. But I don't think it necessarily played every part. I think that, um, again, the decision to go with John Stewart just makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to take that aspect away from him. It just makes sense to go with him for all kinds of reasons. Um, I do think it was interesting though that was such like a bitter battle. You know what I mean? But I think it was a battle that needed to be had, because it would just be kind of messed up, to keep operating like that. Just to triple down on white guys like that, Superman, Batman, Hal Jordan. Like I said, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that from my point of view. Just, I'm taking fandom out of it, and I'm just looking at it from the point of view of business. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to do that. Batman and Superman, like I said, already have that white guy, base covered very, very well. Cyborg does not sufficiently cover that, idealized black male character base. Um, he works well within the context of Teen Titans, but not Justice League. The appeal to me of Justice League is that these characters have their own mythologies and function well on their own. They come from their own worlds. They have a lot going on outside of the team. They have their whole own mythology and world going on outside of the team. Cyborg does not function well on multiple fronts, as it seems to me, because he doesn't really have a whole lot going on outside the team that's been widely accepted. Like, there have been efforts made with Cyborg, but nothing has really taken well. Nothing has become, I hesitate, I don't want, like, the word iconic is so, like, overplayed. Nothing has become, well, how could I put this? I don't know. I can't think of the exact word, but you know what I mean. I guess we can use the word iconic. Unfortunately, Cyborg doesn't have that. Green Lantern does. And Green Lantern is an interesting mythology. So I think that, Green Lantern works well Like, Cyborg does not work well in that context. Green Lantern does. But then people will say, like, dissenters, and I'll give, I'm going to give them their fair side of the argument. So this is a bubble. He waits for me within the Tower of Promises. That's what he's, like, thinking up here. I hope you pick up Zatswan and read it. It's an interesting story. If you like Green Lantern, by the way, there's probably a good... If you like Green Lantern, there's probably, I'll be fair, I don't know, maybe a 50% chance you might like Zatswan. If you like Green Lantern John Stewart, it probably goes up to more about a 70% chance. If you like Green Lantern and Hawkgirl, that number probably goes up to more like 85. And then the rest is going to be like if you're into my art and storytelling and stuff. But I will say that if you are into those things, there's a good chance that you will like Zatswan. So check that out in the link in the description. If you really like what I'm doing and you want to help me out, you can pick up like the paperback. Like you're like, I really like this, or if you really like Zatswan, yeah. Like if you like Zatswan on its own merits, regardless of anything, to do with helping me, then yeah, you can pick the paperback. But if you just want to give it a try and read it to see if you'll like it, like I was saying, the digital is very accessible, only at $2.99. So check that out in the link in the description. I hope you do. Let's keep bolding up some of these lines. So on some of these buildings, not all of them, because we want to bring some of them up more forward. Okay, so what I was talking about, diversity. The thing about diversity, I admit, has gotten like a bad rap with some people, and the thing about that, okay, made a pretty good straight line. Comes with practice, like being able to draw out your lines pretty straight without a ruler. And here we go, and a big trick is one stroke, down, 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 keep going, keep going. Not to keep going, whoop, whoop, whoop. You'll probably get a jagged, broken looking line like that. Okay, so about diversity, yeah, I admit not all diversity has been, first of all, not all of it's been good. Some of it has been kind of like radical in some ways. Some of it has been kind of, preachy, and like it's trying to push something on you. I admit all of that. Like, not all of it is, but some of the movement, some of the stories, some of the characters. And it's kind of become this battleground, which I think is kind of unfortunate, but a part of me kind of thinks it was also maybe inevitable. Now, the thing about it is, like, I like diversity and everything when it's done well. I think it's a good thing to have. Pushing ideologies on people, I guess you can kind of say that, like, stories have been doing that since forever. That's not what I try to do, though. I think if anything in Zatswan, I try to get people... You can talk about certain issues. Science fiction oftentimes has been a vehicle to do that. Like, when you think of the great sci-fi classic writers like H.G. Wells and Asimov and all those types of people, that's been one of the core tenets of science fiction, like the purposes of it, to give commentary on the world around us. So that's been going on for a very long time. However, I think there's a question in how you do that. Now, with me, and I think this is how, like, with me, I'm kind of like, let people make up their decisions for themselves. Like, you can present different things, but let them kind of come to their own conclusions. Don't try to like wallop them over the head with why your view is, if you have a view. Like with a lot of the stuff I do in Zatswan, I think I have a view, but I don't know that you would know that what my view is just from reading Zatswan. Because what I like to do is just present. I speak. My concern with Zatswan is simply letting the characters speak and letting that story be told. It's not to push a message on people. I feel a sneeze incoming. Gonna pause. Okay, back. And yeah, my whole thing with Zatswan is just to get the characters' voices and let them work that out. I just kind of let the characters do that, and I kind of step aside. Honestly, it's kind of funny to say that, but when you do get really into writing and you do really like your characters, honestly, the way it goes with a lot of authors I've heard is like these characters start kind of taking on voices of their own. So yes, I am writing them. Yes, I am in control, but ultimately that's the case. But honestly, there is a part of it where like I know these characters, I know how they would act and what they would say, and apparently there's a part of, my psyche that just these characters are them, and I just let them speak through me. It's like as if I'm an oracle. I think people could understand that concept somewhat. But it's about like letting people come to their own conclusions, and I'm more into doing that than like telling people, oh, it's got to be like this and got to be like, this is my view's the one that matters and my view's the one that's best. Let people decide for themselves. That's what I do with it. That's what I do in Zatswan. So yes, actually in Zatswan I do the sci-fi thing of making commentary, but not in the way that you would think from some of these more modern comic book writers, not in the way they do it. Like that heavy-handed type of way. I think that's a lot less effective. But so I think diversity has gotten a bad rap. It's been involved in some stuff because of there have been stories that aren't the greatest, and maybe I can see some people saying like, well, the intention is in the wrong place. You're focused on like writing, you're focused on this diversity instead of telling good stories. See, I don't know if that's necessarily the case though. I think you just have people who are focused on diversity who probably just aren't good writers, so they weren't going to tell a good story. And or I guess I can see like why some could argue that, well, the editors are focused on hiring people who meet these quotas instead of telling good stories. What I think the editors may have been trying to do was just diversify, no pun intended, their pool of writers, and again, no pun intended, their voices. Like I know there is like a Marvel Voices type series, so again, no pun intended. It's like, well, and I think in doing that, they may have just not found, sometimes they just may have not found good people, good writers. But I think, there are growing pains when you're trying to, when you're trying to maneuver in a new way. So I think it's kind of unfortunate that it's sort of become that sort of battlefield, but I also think perhaps a bit inevitable because there are just also going to be people who aren't going to be down with like that, like diversity in general, and no matter what you do, no matter whether the stories are good or not, like it'll never be good from their point of view, I guess is kind of what I'm getting at. I think this is ready to color, so I'm going to have to put up my inking stuff and actually get some of the coloring stuff ready. So I'm going to pause this for a sec. Okay, so I paused the video for a bit to clean my inking brushes. That's kind of a whole thing when you have like Kolinsky Sable brushes are very valuable actually. They're pretty expensive as brushes go, and you want to take care of them, like to ensure their longevity, of course. So you want to use like a brush cleaner and conditioner on them. So I was cleaning the brushes, and now what we're going to do is, so this red tesseract over here is causing a red glow in this room. So we're gonna work on this face here. What I think I'm going to do is lay down a red watercolor wash, and lay down a red wash, and then we'll go over that with colored pencil. But to give the effect of that red glow, I think we're gonna lay down a wash. So what was I talking about? I think where I left off talking about was it was going to be, the whole diversity thing was probably going to be like a tough fight no matter what you did, because you saw how doggedly some of these fans like fought tooth and nail. And I'm not saying that the fans who like wanted to see Hal Jordan, I don't think it was like they were per se against diversity. I think that for the most, some of them were, but a lot of them, of course, just want to see their character depicted, and that's what their priority is. Their priority, at least their priority isn't diversity. It's just like, it's not diverse, pro or against per se. It's just seeing, I want to see my favorite character. But at the same time, and I think that's honestly how most people feel on the issue. Like, they just want to see what they want to see. But I do believe at the same time, it also was a fight for better representation in, comic books and superheroes and things like that. Because what it really was, as I see it kind of, it wasn't so much like replace the white guy and turn the heroes black or something like that at any cost. It wasn't that. The way I kind of see it is, it actually legitimately made and makes sense to do John Stewart. It would be a shame, given the circumstances that were going on, it just makes sense to do to make John Stewart the premier character, considering they tried Hal Jordan, didn't work out. A lot of people wanted to see John Stewart, even when they did the Hal Jordan movie. It would be a shame to have John Stewart skipped over because people feel they because of old type of thinking, like, oh, a black character won't sell, there's no market for that, or the original's Hal Jordan and we should stick to that because it's you got to do Hal Jordan first. Let me address that point. See, I do recognize and respect that. I do, but what I think, and I know not everybody values this. People feel differently about it. Some people value it, some people just do not. Uh, those comics were made for, in a sense, a different culture. In a sense, a different culture. Um, the cultural norms at the time made it so all those heroes were like white guys for the most part. So Hal Jordan was just your other white guy. And the cultural thinking at the time was that, that's what I'm talking about, old thinking. Okay, if you do a black hero, like, I don't know whether it would do well or not, but you know these people are going to have a massive problem with it. Like, there are going to be people who do have a problem. Like, some of the rationale for thinking that way is, who was the editor who said that? It could have been, I forget which, it was a DC editor, I believe. Which editor said that, like, oh, like, it could have been a Mort Weisinger. Uh, if we do a black hero, we'll lose distribution in the South. No, I'm sorry. It was what's his face, the Flash guy. Goodness, why is his name not coming? That's so weird. Um, this is uncommon because the guy who drew Barry Allen. Please, I kind of want to stick on this until I get it right because I really should know this. I can't believe I'm blanking out on his name. Jeez. I'm pretty sure it was him, though. This is so strange. I am blanking out on his name. Hold on. I gotta look this up. This is uncommon because, like, I do know this guy. Who was the creator of Barry Allen? I can't believe I forgot this name. Yeah, Carmine Infantino. I'll be honest with you. I don't feel that was on the tip of my tongue, so I do know the creator, but for some reason I was just blanking out. Yeah, Carmine Infantino. I think he's the one who said that. Like, if we do I think so. I mean, I think it was him. I could be wrong though, but I don't want to put words in his mouth. But I think he said that. So the point being mainly though is that the cultural norms at the day when these characters were made, you know, they are not the cultural norms now, thankfully. And that is kind of old world, like old time thinking. You know, so we have to recognize that these characters, and not everything from back then was great. It honestly wasn't, especially, you know, depending on who you were. Um, so considering all of this, that thinking is not really true, if it ever was, that if you know, make a black character, there's no market for it. I don't think that was actually ever true. I think that it was a thinking people had in various sectors of publishing, in like television, movies, and stuff, to make them feel a bit more secure at not doing black characters, you know. But no, like I was saying, like things like Get Out and Sinners and Black Panther and stuff like that prove there's a market for black characters. You know, people want to see that, and they will show up, and they will pay if you put out something that they like. So we're going to let this wash dry so I can kind of focus more on rambling while this dries. Then we're going to go over this with colored pencil. So this just wash will give us kind of our, this will serve as our red glow. And then we can just do the rest with colored pencil. Why? Watercolor and pen and ink, it's called. This is a good example of it. Or ink and wash. They work good together because watercolor is translucent. You see, like, you can see right through this, and the ink work shows through. Like, watercolor is a thin consistency, and the viscosity is that it's very thin. Why? So like pairing watercolor with ink work is like a very popular thing for artists. It's a very popular medium, for artists to use. Other types of paint like oils and acrylics, not as much, though you can like make them, you can thin them down. Uh, it's like those paints are known to be more opaque. So like if you were to use this, if you were to lay down your inks and then paint over this with acrylics, the acrylics will go right on top. Like you won't see this inking anymore. They're so thick that they can go on top. Though there are different types of acrylic paint. A heavy body acrylic, which is what I use, is like thicker. Then there is like thinner acrylic paint. So some acrylic paints you could do ink work successfully with, but it works out. Typically, watercolor is a better medium to use with ink than those other forms of paint like oil, acrylic, and even gouache. Gouache can go either way. You can thin gouache down to act like a watercolor, or you can make it thicker. So gouache is a pretty interesting paint medium, but yeah. But getting back to the point, yeah. So what I was talking about with the lanterns thing, it's like, yeah, we have to factor in that was made in a different time with different standards, and not all the thinking there was good. A lot of it was, meant to disenfranchise people, and these are people who, like I said, it's not just social justice, it's economics, it's capitalism. If you want those black people's money, you had better put out something they're going to like. That's going to bring them to the table. Now, with the white guys, like I was talking about, your bases are covered pretty darn good with Superman and Batman. Like I was saying, Hal Jordan's not going to get over those characters with that demographic because he just never has. Now, if you bring in a John Stewart Green Lantern, for the black people, Superman and Batman won't even be their guy. It's going to be Green Lantern. You know what I mean? But I guess a counter argument, you can make as well, do Cyborg, and Cyborg can be their guy. I'm just going to say, from everything I've witnessed, from every discussion I've watched and partaken in, and just from what I know, common sense stuff, Cyborg's just not going to do that. I don't think he's well equipped for that. I understand there are people who really like him. Let me get this closer just so we can kind of get it in the camera more. I understand there are people who really like Cyborg. And I think it's not that I hate Cyborg, I really don't. I just think he doesn't work that great in the context of Justice League. I think he works great in the context of the new Teen Titans. And why is that? Because many of those characters were either sidekicks, or they were like original characters that did not initially have kind of their own deep-rooted mythology in, the DC universe, like Starfire, Raven, Beast Boy. And the other characters like Kid Flash were sidekicks, and, characters like that, and Robin as well. So when you're talking about Justice League, though, I think Cyborg works well in that context. When you're talking about the cream of the crop superheroes, though, of the DC universe, all of whom, other than arguably Martian Manhunter, are very idealized, and who have their own mythologies and things like that. I know Cyborg does not work well within that context, I don't think. John Stewart works better, though I understand the argument some people are going to make, and I'm prepared for that, of, well, John Stewart is just not the main character in the Green Lantern mythology. It's been Hal Jordan. Recognized. I do recognize that, but I think that that doesn't mean it isn't something you can't work on. You can and you should work on giving John Stewart a stronger and better presence in Green Lantern. Much of the reason why he doesn't have that is because the white editors and writers who handle Green Lantern have not want to touch him because they just do not like him for whatever their reasons. I'm not going to, make big assumptions, but a lot of these people who, Green Lantern fans, there's such a chasm, and it's hard to bridge that gap with them because they're coming from two completely different places. Like a lot of these Green Lantern, these Hal Jordan fans from their perspective, from their vantage point, they just cannot understand why you would do a John Stewart, or they cannot understand or respect the appeal of the character. So naturally, he's just boring and doesn't contribute anything. Well, when you've been weaned on Jeff Johns' Green Lantern comics, it makes sense for you to have that perspective because within the context of those comics, that's what John Stewart has been. But because they didn't like him, the people behind the scenes didn't like him, and they didn't want to write him. Now there is your problem, and that is a problem that needs to be fixed. Which fortunately it seems DC is working on that, with their current comics. Get people who actually want to build that character and who want to write that character, and then it will work. Now, about the John Stewart being boring, that's not true because otherwise the character wouldn't have the fan base he has. Under Dwayne McDuffie and Bruce Timm's work, John Stewart was anything but boring. He was like a very, successful and popular character. The Jeff Johns fans, it seems to me, these Hal Jordan fans, they don't care about that though because they didn't like him regardless. Feel another sneeze coming. Hold on a second. But the thing about, and that's fine, this stuff is subjective, so they don't necessarily it's not a given that they'll like them or that they have to. But I think the thing to understand is that their perspective isn't universal. There are people who really do like John Stewart, who don't think he's boring, and there are people, yes, even Hawk Girl fans, I've witnessed them. It's not just John Stewart fans who love this, but people who legitimately think his romance with Hawk Girl is superior and more engaging and more interesting than Hawkman's romance with Hawk Girl. Those people exist. And, that's just the interesting thing about it. It's interesting how there's just a big disconnect, it seems to me, where John Stewart is concerned. Like, the traditional DC Comics fan, he does not seem to appeal to much. Interestingly, though, it seems that the normie, what we would consider the normie, he seems to be their Green Lantern, and they like him just fine. The traditional DC Comics fan, I think from their point of view, they like that stuff that was basically born of that old world. I'm not talking about old world like Europe and Africa and Asia and stuff. Not the location, the old world. I'm talking about more the time, the old world. I think I don't blame them per se, but they like the stuff born of that old world thinking. You know what I mean? And I don't blame them because the stuff was made to be liked. We could still let this dry a bit more. It's pretty dry, but we'll let it dry more. You can speed up the drying process. Like, I do have a hair dryer down there I can grab and do that. But you can do that, but it's probably not recommended to because that can mess with the colors a bit. and it can like redistribute how the water interacts. Like it can blow the water places and kind of cause it to dry differently. So if you want that real authentic, if you want, your watercolors to be as good as they can, it's best to just let them air dry. And sometimes that takes time. What I would usually do if I'm letting this spot dry, I would go on and paint a different part of the picture. But what I'm planning on doing here is just staying on this panel, letting this dry, then going over it with colored pencil, which means I should take this time to get my colored pencils ready, but I have been talking. So I guess like what I was saying is, yeah, they like that stuff. They do, and I understand that. It was made to be liked, and I like some of that stuff as well. But it's also very, well, because it was a product of a different time for different sensibilities. It is also very, I guess one way to put it is exclusive. And that just does not work as well today. Or people have enough sensibilities have changed, and people recognize that that stuff is exclusive in not a good way, because that was the cultural norm at the time. Superheroes are these idealized characters with powers, shown to be, the greatest, or something to aspire to be. They save people, they're empowered. A lot of people, and even today, don't like the idea of an empowered black man. And I kind of say that because an example is like, I recently bought this game. I have to put more time into playing it. Assassin's Creed Shadows, where you play as the the black samurai, Yasuke, who is a historical figure, and there's this massive debate over whether Yasuke was really a samurai, serving Oda Nobunaga, or was he just not a samurai? See, in history, Yasuke was granted a sword and granted land and served Nobunaga, which, yeah, that sounds like a samurai, especially if you're granted land, and you're given a sword and you serve Nobunaga. But yeah, a lot of these people like want to argue like, oh, he wasn't really a samurai. Like he wasn't a samurai. He was a something else. And it's like, this stuff took place in 15, like Yasuke like lived during the 1500s, I believe. Uh and it's kind of like, why are you so, it seems like some people are just kind of vehemently against the idea that this black guy was or could have been a samurai. And I don't know what like some of these white people, like, again, it's kind of like I asked in a recent video I made about Green Lantern, and like, why are Hal Jordan fans so against the Hawk Girl and Green and John Stewart romance, when like what is your stake in that? You know what I mean? This is John Stewart and Hawk Girl. How does Hal Jordan play into that? Like, are all the Hal Jordan fans, or did many of them suddenly become huge Hawkman fans as well? And if that's so, how come Hawkman's comics are always kind of not selling that great? You know what I mean? Like, what? It's like, it seems to me, and I could be wrong here, but part of my intuition is kind of like they just don't like the idea of John Stewart doing something. You know what I mean? And it seems to me, because it's like, okay, you guys aren't even Japanese or anything. What is your stake in whether this black guy was a samurai or not? Why do you feel so strongly about that, even one way or another? Uh, what difference does that make to you? And it seems to me that some people just do not, like the idea of this historical black guy being empowered. They'd probably feel more comfortable if he was just a slave or something like that. You know what I mean? Um, which, he had a sword, he had land, he served Nobunaga. He seemed to be more than just, a petty servant by the sound of it. So, I mean, I just wanted to bring that up because, yes, there are people who, that's the thinking, this empowered black guy that makes some people feel uncomfortable for whatever their reasons. And, these characters were made for a time to cater to sensibilities like that. The Justice League was made in a time to cater to a sensibility like that. So I do understand and respect that, like, a Hal Jordan was on the original 1960s Justice League roster, but I do think it is worth questioning whether it is wise to stay completely faithful to this thing that was made from a completely different era for a completely different culture to a degree, to appeal to a sensibility that was comfortable to that culture. Especially when there is even further reason to deviate from that, such as you did try Hal Jordan in a big movie and it didn't go well. So I think that what I'm saying is that this is a big victory for legitimate, real, not shallow, not even radical, not like even revenge seeking diversity. Um, I mean, kind of like the real, legitimate, worthwhile, genuine diversity. I think the decision, like, James Gunn and company have made to move forward primarily with John Stewart being the star and um, presumably the primary Green Lantern in this new universe, I think that was a real victory, because it would just seem kind of, you know, regressive, I think, to just use we could we can color over this, but there's still a bit of ripples in the paper. Those will like settle and it'll be totally flat again. I think there is it would be a bit regressive, I think, to be like, nope, we're doing Hal Jordan again, because it's just like white guys all the way down. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm glad that, I don't know if they thought about all of this stuff that I said, about all of the, what's the word I'm looking for? All of those factors, I guess I can put it that way, that I've said in choosing John Stewart, but I do think all of those factors are real. And, I do think that I'm confident in this Lantern show, especially since the Superman movie is doing so well. I think it'll do well, and, it'll be another notch in the belt of John Stewart. It's just kind of, um, it'll be interesting to me that, when they do, it seems every time they do put John Stewart in front of audiences, if this does work out, and I'm confident it will, that things work out. But when they tried, so see, the thing about it is like this, a lot of people are, they don't like to talk about things like this because it's uncomfortable. See, it's like, it's uncomfortable. What people, I'm finding out, don't want to, because I recently had an interesting experience, which maybe I'll relate it sometime else, but you know what? In these rambly videos, I think I will just talk. So again, I don't know how long this is going to be. Probably, again, I don't know. We'll see. But an experience I had was, I don't know if you get this, but when you're on Reddit, sometimes you will get like emails from Reddit, just kind of random. Like, this is what somebody's saying in a thread of a thing you might be like um, interested in. Like, maybe it's a subreddit you looked at a certain time or something. And it's like, oh, and I got a subreddit. I got like a notice like that, and it was like for the Robotech subreddit. It was like a thread in there. And I was like, oh, cool, there's a Robotech subreddit. I didn't think about that. So as you can see here, I'm trying to kind of, work my YouTube channel, like get a bigger audience for that. And so what I'm doing now is I'm looking to choose my colored pencils, like looking for my palette. I can show you my colored pencil collection, and this is just one book. There's a whole other book, but okay, let's see what you can see. Okay, so I don't know if you'll be able to get a good view of the whole thing. This is what it looks like. And you open it up, and there are like pencils here. These are my Holbein pencils, I'm pretty sure. They're from Japan. Holbein makes like really good colored pencils. Holbein's one of my favorite brands. Okay, we're still in Holbein. When we get to this spot here, we get into Prismacolor Premieres, which Prismacolor is a very famous American brand. Prismacolor Premier these are good pencils. These are kind of like the colored pencils everybody knows, and the ones that are like really accessible. Like, you can find them many places. They're affordable, but they're really good. Prismacolors are great. Now we're getting into my Caran d'Ache collection. The Caran d'Ache colored pencils are like the premium pencil. Like, they're expensive. They're a Swiss brand. And they're really good. What are these pencils down here? I think these are Prismacolor Verithins. Yeah, they're Prismacolor Verithins. The others were Prismacolor Premier. We have some Derwent. Derwent is a British brand. We have Derwent. Uh-oh. The book's gonna fall over. Hold on a second. Gotta stabilize stuff. Also, I don't want this to come off either. And probably I'm not going to edit any of this. So again, what you get is what you get. I just felt like showing you my pencil collection. Okay, so I have to choose the colors that I want to color her. So where should we start? Should we start on Alacazona's hair? Oh wait, no, this is I don't think this actually is Alakazona. It's an interesting thing. Our main character, AC Cooper, has dreams of himself and a woman that dreams of someone who looks exactly like himself. He's playing that role, and of a woman who looks exactly like Alakazona, his love interest. And right now we're actually in one of those dream scenes. So this is kind of our Alakazona-like woman. So where should we start? Should we start on her hair, or should we start on her skin? I have to debate that. Probably do the hair. How about we do that? Okay, so she is a blonde. So an interesting thing about blonde hair is not actually yellow, even though we think of it as yellow. It's interesting thing is not many things in nature, not many like at least animals in it, like flowers, yes, but there's not a lot of yellow. There are flowers and like fish. Like, there are yellow fish, but when you think about things like fur and people's like blonde hair that we might think of kind of yellowish, it's usually not a yellow. It's different colors, you know, like, but they combine to kind of, we think of them as a bit of a yellow. I'm just trying to think of what colors, like what brand of pencil should I choose to do this and what color should I use. Let me think. So anyway, what was I saying about Green Lantern? Before I got sidetracked by my own art ruminations and colored pencil collections. I can't completely recall, but the main point is that I do think this is it's good that they're choosing John Stewart, I think. Because let's have a look, see. We have Naples Ochre of the Karen Dash line. This could be nice. Let me think. You know what I'm gonna do, because I do have some consideration. I don't want a bunch of dead air time, and I do want to like use some brain power to choose my colored pencils. I'm gonna pause the video and come back to you when I have those ready. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to work. We'll just start over here and work our way around. The interesting thing about colored pencils, you usually want to go light to dark with them. So some mediums you can do your darks and then your lights on top of them. But colored pencil, watercolor, those you usually want to go with your lightest colors, and then you can do your dark colors on top. Okay, let's make sure I got my sharpener ready. Okay. So what I was talking about with the whole Green Lantern thing, yeah. Okay, so these don't fit sharpening here. So yeah, there are people who liked it the way that it was, you know, and I mean, we can't blame them for that. And that is the big question. Do you just continue to do things kind of the old-fashioned way and cater to that? Or do you adjust things to, you know, for the times, so to speak? That's not always an easy question, and it's not always, you know, you're always going to, like, make somebody upset with that. You know, it's not easy to please everybody with that. So this is a very light color here, Primrose. I think this is, yeah, Primrose in the Karen Dash Luminance line. And that, like, red, the color of this light, yeah, let's keep going. I guess what I was kind of debating a bit was to do her with colored pencil at all, or go in with like more watercolors, but let's do colored pencil for her. Colored pencil is a good medium because, I mean, there are a couple things I'm gonna like talk about colored pencils that make it such a good medium. First of all, it allows unparalleled control, like for precision and ease of control. Colored pencils just nothing beats it, really. You could get in really tight crevices, and you know, work comfortably. And another thing too, it's like really, I think this is one of the things that makes colored pencils really popular, especially with like the adult coloring crowd. Like, I don't know if you're aware, but in kind of recent years, I think it's died down a bit. But there was this big boom where coloring, I think it's actually still pretty popular actually. There's this big boom where like coloring books are meant for adults are like really popular. And I think the main medium that people use, so there's this whole new subculture of like adult colorists. You know, people who have fun working on coloring books, and you know, some artists have gotten really popular, like what's her name? Jane something? Is it Jane Davenport or something like that? Like doing coloring books. And now there's a fad where people just kind of poop out kind of boringish coloring books just using AI, but those are kind of easy to spot. So colored pencils like very popular with the people who do that, like engage in that medium, and the reason is because it's a really relaxing, colored pencils like a slow medium, but it's really relaxing and low maintenance. Other mediums like watercolor are not. Like with paint, it's like time is of the essence. Like you need to think harder about what you're doing, and you have a shorter amount of time to maybe do what you want to do. Like if you want to do wet into wet techniques, you kind of have to rush around and do something before the paint dries, and you know, or you got to wait for the paint to dry. And it's kind of, you got to kind of have to move around kind of quick. Like time is of the essence more with paint. Like if you want to get certain blendings well, you know, you kind of have to like do things at a certain time. And colored pencil is, and it requires like more forethought, I think. The cool thing about colored pencils is just like you just chill, and you just chill and do everything at your own pace. Downside about colored pencils is it's slower, but that's also pretty, could be an upside if you just want to relax and unwind, and a lot of people, you know, do with colored pencils. And I think that that's why the medium is, that's the one of the big upsides of colored pencils. Very low maintenance, they're easy to travel with, easy to whip out anywhere and just start doing your thing. Paint, like we went watercolor, is going to have to require, it's higher maintenance. You know, you can watercolor anywhere and people do, but it's still higher maintenance because you're involving water. And while you can maintain water in a water brush, like a little like kind of brush, I have plenty that like store water and you just kind of squeeze them and the water comes out, I would say it's still just higher maintenance. So anyway, we're talking about Green Lantern. Yeah, I think it was like really good the way things turned out. Are there unhappy people? Yeah, it's hard, you know, it's hard to like make everybody completely happy. With a thing like Green Lantern, you never are going to, you know, because that is like one of the most fractured, you know, fan bases of all of comics. It's possibly the most fractured. It might be the most fractured in like superhero comics. Green Lantern, I can, if it is, I can definitely believe it. Okay, so let us get how about this color? So this girl has very light hair. But sticking to Green Lantern, these look like they might be the same color, but they're not. If you want good blends, you know, it's good to do subtle color changes. Like one color into another color that's a bit different but not the same, then into another, that one goes into another color that's a bit different but not the same. Yeah, so apparently I heard that some people want the upcoming Lantern show to fail because they're doing John Stewart as the main character. What are my thoughts on that? Kind of typical aggressive fanish behavior. I'll be completely honest with you. Uh, I wasn't shedding any tears when like the Green Lantern movie didn't do well. It kind of seems like, well, it was just kind of weird. To me, that was a different sort of thing. It seemed like to me, it wasn't just that Green Lantern movie by itself. It was kind of like the whole um, multimedia effort of DC Comics at the time with Hal Jordan and Green Lantern. It seems like there was a whole effort to strongly push Hal Jordan all of a sudden, quickly after John Stewart had made Green Lantern popular on television. And this didn't just happen in 2011. All of a sudden, it really started around 2004 or something like that. 2004 or 5. It like started with Green Lantern Rebirth, and just like never. It didn't end until like maybe, I don't know. It just didn't end until a long time. But it seems like there was just a whole effort to like sideline John Stewart. And it was just so awkward because he was just on TV being so, like, doing so well. You know, it's like, I know that not all fans, like, convert over, all TV fans, like, convert over to becoming comic fans, but I was actually one of those people. And when it's like, you're looking for more of your dude, John Stewart, well, it was like DC Comics was doing everything they could to not give you that. Not just, I know it's easy to like think the world's out to get you in particular, but sometimes it actually, I do believe that they were doing a concerted effort to sideline that character because they didn't like the fact that he was popular on TV and it wasn't Hal Jordan. um And so when the Green Lantern movie did not do what it would be, so my point was that it wasn't just the Green Lantern movie. It was that whole like endeavor, you know, by Dan DiDio, Jeff Johns, Peter Tomasi, those people. It was like so weird to have how like John Stewart depicted so well on TV, and in the comic books you pick up a Green Lantern comic book, it's like a whole different scenario. But I think that was by design. You know, you're gonna have a hard time convincing me that it wasn't. So when the Green Lantern movie didn't do well in 2011, I wasn't shedding any tears. It seemed like it seemed like to me it was a little funny because after their powerful endeavors to sideline John, they got egg all over their face. I think the thing I have a problem with that is how can I put this? Like, it's since I'm just gonna ramble with these videos. I'm just gonna let stuff kind of all come out. The problem I have with that is like, you have a whole other demographic of people trying to get into this, and you just don't want to take them. You want to go back to not taking them in consideration at all, you know, and putting things right back. Well, that's how they liked it. You know what I mean? And so I think that was just kind of a shame, but I understand. Like at the same time, it's like I understand that I'm not like saying it's all completely just racially motivated, but it's kind of hard to remove that component from it, honestly. I guess it's just a difference of values. Like, do you value that there are really no worthwhile black characters in your catalog? Does that mean anything to you? Well, to the people behind the scenes, like at the time, no. Or do you value that, like, not just the characters, but what do they do? You don't have them doing anything. Their values just say that didn't matter to them, or they'll try to. That's what I was going to talk about, my Robotech experience. I'll get to that in a second. Their values tell them that's just not a value. They don't care. Um, and okay, like nobody. I get it. Like, that's not necessarily a crime. Your values don't have to align with mine. You know, I'm not saying that they do. But well, that's why the thing about it is, like, okay, you can do that, but here's where, like, James Gunn and these people, I think, did make a good move here. If you don't, so as we've kind of gone over, there's money in them hill, there's gold in them hills, you know what I mean, with like with a good black character. There is, if you do it well, you don't sideline them, you give people something that they'll like. If Warner Brothers doesn't want to snatch up that, if they don't want to go, you know, mine that hill or gold rush that hill, somebody else will come along and do that. And all that money you could have potentially gotten, you know, will just go to whoever else. And it's just not good business to do that. Like, I'm going to be completely honest with you, actually, for reasons like this, I think in the long run, John Stewart is a more profitable character than Hal Jordan. Now, is he more profitable among die-hard comic book fans who've been reading since it's like decades and decades ago? No, he certainly isn't, because again, those people like things that the way that they have been, and they're perfectly okay with, you know, a black character's not doing anything at all, or rationalizing when they're not doing anything, like, oh yes they are, or, you know, like things like that. But okay, so Hal will be more popular with them, no doubt, because he has a history of being more popular with them. The popularity of Hal Jordan with them is, a lot of it is based upon history. Like, people have a history, like buying him, looking for him, reading him. Now, the thing is, though, it goes back to what I was saying about, you already have that white guy base covered really well, you know, and you got characters that Hal Jordan, and it's good too. Actually, that's a strong demographic. Let's get okay. I think I got it. Strong demographic. You're obviously going to want to go for that demographic. How, you know, you got that covered really well with Batman and Superman. Hal's not going to get over them with that demographic. That demographic's always going to value Batman and Superman more. Just historically, they have, and that's likely to keep on going, you know. Like, is it possible to be a big breakout thing like Iron Man was? Sure. But yeah, it's possible, but, you know, when you're going up against Batman and Superman, or playing in the same sandbox as them, that's those are some, you know, that's that's powerful competition there. And like, I think with John Stewart, though, so Hal Jordan's not going to be the go-to for that demographic, but John Stewart will be for, like, the black demographic. So in the long run, I think John Stewart is a better financial choice, and has the potential to be the more substantive character in a lot of ways, because I think in a lot of ways he actually does mean more, because he means something to a whole demographic of people, whereas with Hal Jordan, I mean, Hal Jordan is an also ran, I would say, when you're looking at it from that perspective. And here's the interesting thing about it, like, some people will say, like, why does this even matter, why do you even care about that, like, if the fact of the matter is, like, plugging your ears. I've dealt with this with a lot of fans, and I will get to that Robotech story pretty soon. I know this is a super long video. We'll keep going with it. We'll see how long it is, or it ends up being. Plugging your ears and acting like stuff isn't going on, that's what those people are doing who think that, like, we're like, will you just, like, stop thinking about that and stop bringing it up? Because, I've encountered that before. The fact of the matter is, this stuff does matter. And for a corporation that's trying to maximize profits, you need to be, and I'm sure they are aware that this matters. You know what I mean? So, it might be uncomfortable for some people to talk about issues like race and demographics and how characters, relate to all of that. But it actually makes a difference. It actually matters. And Hal, yeah, I think with the white demographic, Hal's just going to be, there are going to be some people he's their guy. I mean, that's the way it is now, but for the most part, he's an also ran. And, when you go from normies to, I'm sorry, when you go from those comic fans to um, just putting stuff in front of normies, it's a whole different scene. All that history that a Hal Jordan may have accumulated in the comics of doing this and doing that, it just doesn't matter out there to those people. So while we can, just out of respect for that, recognize that. And I think that's the Lanterns is doing. Like, Justice League just kind of, for the most part, the cartoon show, I mean, pretended that Hal didn't exist. For the most part, I mean, not like, obviously he got that tiny little cameo when there were time shenanigans going on. I'm emptying my pencil sharpener in a trash bag off camera. For the most part, they just pretended he didn't exist. This time around, I think they want to do something a little different. Recognize that he's a part of the universe, kind of out of respect for the character, but, and I think that's a good way to go. Like, not just pretend, oh, he's not there and the guy's always just been John Stewart or something. But it seems their main guy is going to be John. Well, it is, like, according to what Gunn said, and that's a good, that is the smarter move, I think. And even just taking, it's hard to, I do recognize that it is hard to completely take personal bias out of the equation. I recognize that, but I really am here. I really do think that going over the reasons I've said, that's the smart thing to do. And I think John Stewart is a character who has potential to be the bigger and more powerful character. You do Hal Jordan, again, he's just going to be an also ran. Another movie or thing with a white guy superhero. I'm not saying that can't work, it can. But John Stewart, doing a good John Stewart can actually make a difference. Make a more substantive difference culturally, I think. Because here's what John Stewart, I think, has to offer. So, I think black people are actually quite a diverse bunch. And they like different things. So different options for them are good. And obviously John Stewart's not just meant just specifically for black people, but bear with me. I'm going to frame it like within the context of them. So Black Panther already kind of hit the scene, and Black Panther is this ultra black, you know, African king character. So his whole thing, his whole trip is like blackness and being black. It's even in the name, you know. That's powerful for a lot for a lot of people, yes, and it's a good concept for a character. John Stewart, on the other hand, but what if people don't want one of these identity based heroes? And what is this identity based hero? It's this, you know, the character's ethnic identity or something like that is all tied up in the concept of the character. Not everybody's going to want that. Some people will want that because, again, people are different. They have different options, and they just might not want that thrown up in their face, you know, all the time. And it's also interesting that like with Black Panther, even now he looks like, and was presented as even like, oh, well, you're the black superhero, you know, instead of, you know, like that's the whole thing, like you're the black superhero. And I think where John Stewart is potentially very powerful is he offers something different to that. John Stewart is the Green Lantern, like his whole identity isn't wrapped up in his superhero persona, you know, and that's a different twist on the whole thing, and he's not. He is a different version to the White Green Lantern. He actually is, but at the same time, I think he has more room to work with that than a Miles Morales does in regards to Spider-Man. You know, like Miles Morales is, because Peter Parker is actually iconic. You know what I mean? So I don't think Miles Morales ever will be like Spider. He'll never be Spider-Man per se. He'll always be alt Spider-Man. You know what I mean? Like other universe Spider-Man or Black Spider-Man. He'll always be something like that. Because Peter Parker's Spider-Man. Hal Jordan isn't. He isn't so ingrained in the culture and the consciousness that he has completely, undisputedly gotten that identity of Green Lantern. You know, I think his fans would love him to have that, and I think to many of his fans he does have that because they're seeing things through their perspective. And to them, to like the most stubborn of them, their perspective is just what matters. Again, though, doesn't mean nothing to like a normie people who are looking at it. To them, Hal Jordan doesn't have that because it's actually John Stewart, or they just don't care. Like it doesn't. They don't value that. They don't place any value on Hal Jordan or what he has or Green Lantern at all. So I think John Stewart offers something different to both of those. Like, arguably, they're like the biggest black heroes at the moment. Black Panther and Miles Morales. Because Black Panther is so tied up in his racial identity. Miles isn't. But Miles is never, ever, well, no, he's just not. Let's just be realistic. He's never going to really be Spider-Man. Because Spider-Man's always going to be Peter Parker. Peter Parker's just too big in the, cultural awareness. Miles Morales will always be kind of a fun alternate version. So John Stewart offers something different. He actually he can step up and be the Green Lantern, which I know is going to have some of like Hal Jordan people gnashing their teeth, but you know, in response to that, like Hal had his chance up at bat, and you don't always get a bunch of chances, you know. Like if it was John Stewart, I can assure you he would only have one ever. Primrose, yeah, this is my base light color. So we actually are working up her hair quite a bit. And I might want to get some odorless mineral spirits and blend out. I think I'll do that. I have some here. And we're going to, yep, I have some. Now we need a cheap brush. And we want to blend out. Now, interestingly, we have Zatswan here. And I'll talk about him. So yeah, John Stewart offers something different that can be powerful to fans. Like it's good to have options. Maybe you don't want that racial identity thrown up in your face, you know, all the time. Maybe you just want, you know, your character to just be a superhero and not having to be reminded of what color what, you know, what his race is every time he's mentioned or brought up or, you know, brought into the picture. Or maybe you don't, this idea of this alternate guy like Miles Morales just doesn't appeal to you as much. Maybe you want your guy to be the guy, you know. And don't these sound like kind of things people would want? Some people would want, at least. Some people wouldn't value all that, but you know that I see an opening there. Like a lot of people would. And you know, John Stewart, there's an opening for him there that is not being filled by these other big black characters like Black Panther and Miles Morales. Conversely, some people want that stuff, and some stuff that John Stewart doesn't do as well. Like these are just preferences and different. That's why options are usually good. It looks like we're doing something here, huh? That's why it's actually pretty good for me to ramble when I work, because it just kind of makes, like, I am thinking about my work, but it just makes things go by easier and quicker. Because in some senses, sometimes I'm mostly thinking, I'm focused on my work, sometimes I am actually talking, and it's like things are going on autopilot. Like I'm conscious enough to know what I'm doing and not make mistakes, but it's like I'm thinking about the subject I'm talking about, and then suddenly I'll look at the work and like, oh, I've been doing some stuff here, it's getting done. So it's pretty cool for like that reason. I know these videos are long. I hope you just enjoy, just think of them as like hangouts, you know. Hopefully the rambling is interesting enough, you know, to warrant the length of the video, or watching me do artwork is interesting enough. And you know, I always want to say, if Zatswan does look appealing to you, and we'll talk about Zatswan a little bit, I do have some thoughts, then check out the link in the video description and pick it up on Amazon. Only $2.99 for the digital. If you're a super duper fan, or if you just like, you know, printed books, you can pick it up in print as well. And speaking of Zatswan, he himself feels still a different option that even John Stewart doesn't. Zatswan is a wholly original character that's not any kind of derivative of a white one. and does not have to like compete with a white one per se for the identity of his like superhero mantle. So he's a character, you know, that the whole thing is built around him, which for other black characters like John Stewart, Miles Morales, they don't really offer that. Like again, John Stewart is highly derivative. He's derivative of a white character, and so is Miles. Black Panther does offer that, though again, Black Panther is really caught up in his identity, that's not inherently a bad thing. That's not. It's just something different. Some people might not want that, or it might appeal less to them, you know? Zatswan's not wrapped up in his identity at all, but he offers an interesting identity as far as being mixed. You don't see that a lot, even though we have been mentioning a mixed character quite often with Miles Morales. But so yeah, there are like different the characters offer different things, and that's what I wanted to do with Zatswan. Is like, okay, find some openings that I, don't often. Where can he fit in this? What can he offer that other characters aren't offering? And that's one of those things, just not being any kind of derivative of some kind of like white version of the character. Because, we can see the trouble that can cause. Just look, Green Lantern's like a really good example of that, actually. Actually, this is going along quicker than I thought. Like, we're making some progress up here. And I still might go down in these areas, add a little bit more details, and I know there's this area back here to get. I might want to get like a light green color. Light blues and greens. The thing about blonde hair is that there are, and you find this in other hair colors as well. It's not like one color. It's like there are a lot of colors going on in it. Like, it's not just all yellow or all, one particular color. It's like, if you actually really look and you know how to look, what to look for, you'll actually see that there's a lot of complexity going on in there. Like a lot of different hues and things going on. Greens and purples and, when you're an artist, it's good. Well, you kind of also naturally just develop an eye. You start looking at the world a little differently, a little more, with a little more deliberately. You start like seeing, you just start looking at everything differently, perspective, and how things fade away into the background. The manner in which they do, like color temperature, things like that. Even when you're just out and about looking at things, you just start looking at things differently. People's hair, I mean, like I'm saying, like blonde hair has got a lot of stuff going on in a lot of different colors. If you know how to look at it, you'll like see that. It's not just yellow. So I will probably wrap this video up because it is going on pretty long. That Robotech experience, I won't forget that. We'll talk about that in another video. I will get back to that. I will make a note of it. But I hope you appreciated hanging out. I'll probably take a little break from coloring a bit. And it was really helpful for me actually too, because I got, this stuff done, and, wasn't thinking much about it really. Because a lot of times, believe it or not, art can be quite a grueling thing. It can be, it's not, it's a very fun thing and you love it, of course. But there's also, I won't lie, a lot of tedium involved. And, this just kind of, my rambles here kind of make the process go by easier, I would say. So, I know they're very long, but this is a format that I'm going to experiment with and see how it does. See how people like it, see how I like doing it. So far, I'm really enjoying it, actually. And then go from there. All right, everybody, but let's just in closing it. I think it's cool that they made the right decision with John Stewart. I'm glad they did this. I would say that, again, John Stewart and his fans won the Great Green Lantern War, it seems to me, and it was a hard fight, but it was a fight worth having for the sake of diversity and not having black characters passed over and treated inconsequent. Like, I know a lot of people out there, and even Hal Jordan fans, they love that narrative that this character doesn't matter, he's boring, he's inconsequential. They're very comfortable with that, but um, the character John Stewart really is not, but they would love for him to be. And that's why Jeff Johns wrote him that way. Because he was comfortable with wanted to push the narrative that the character doesn't matter, the character is boring, and, they're comfortable with that. And it doesn't matter to well, because in a lot of them, they would have a smooth world of black characters were just that in general, or it just doesn't matter to them if they are that, because that's just not where their values are at. Obviously, to some of us, it does matter, and to those of us who it matters to, it was a fight worth fighting, and it's quite a victory that we won that battle. That because it's an important thing, because we should have superheroes that matter. That is an important thing that is not trivial. That is not like just child's play. That really makes a big difference, to have really powerful images that are presented well, like heroes, that people who care about that, and even people who don't, can see, and turn to. It's like a very powerful thing, I think, and it's worth celebrating. I would say that this is a battle that we won, and it's worth acknowledging that this is a battle that we won, and it's worth acknowledging it was a battle, not the most important vital battleground, but still a vital battleground. Like, it was still like I said, a fight worth, standing up to that. People who would just want, like I said, who are comfortable with these images and these characters not mattering, not doing anything, getting passed over, and so on and so forth. Because, again, I'll just close out one more time. There were people who are very comfortable with that narrative, or that status quo, that state of affairs, where the black characters don't matter. It doesn't matter whether they're there or not. They're not important. They don't do anything. That, like, the stuff that John Stewart gets accused of. I'm not saying everybody who says that. Like, I don't think necessarily everybody who says that loves that, but from their point of view, that's all he is, and I think they're okay with that. But you know, they didn't win this time around, and of course they're going to be bitter over that. That's just to be expected. That's just, I kind of wondered. I guess these are ruminations for another day, but I've kind of wondered, is it even worth kind of trying to? Because I was thinking about Green Lantern Beware My Power, that direct to video film. And I remember I made a review of it like a while back ago. And I think my consensus, my thought in the review, actually, the thought that I came to in the review was that, oh, I don't know if you should have made Hal Jordan parallax, because that's gonna like make his fans angry, and you don't need to necessarily step on them to tell a good John Stewart story. And I think I'm kind of coming to like a different sort of view, and it's not to be spiteful towards those different fans, but I think the point of view I'm coming a little closer to is, no matter what you do with John Stewart, they're never gonna like him. They're just not. He's just not made to. He just does not appeal to them. He's always gonna be boring or something. Like no matter what you do, he always is. So I've kind of thought about this a bit, and I'll think about it a bit more. Maybe we could have a different discussion about it in the future. Should you even bother doing anything to like compromise or offer any kind of olive branch or do anything for these people when no matter what you do, they're just not gonna appreciate, they're just not gonna like your thing anyway? Like, they're kind of a lost cause, is what I'm saying. Should you take them into consideration at all? Or, should you just be like, there's part of me thinking that, like, no matter what you do, they're always gonna, like, hate that character and never be behind him, so why bother even appealing to that? Just kind of know who you're appealing to and go hard into that, Like, no matter what you do. Like, no matter how well you write Green Lantern and Hot Girl, these people are always just going to hate it, even if it's like written way better than Green Lantern and Hot Girl and Hawk Man, because they're just not, their values or their perspective just isn't attuned to appreciating or liking that, and some people are like that with John Stewart just in general as a character. Like, no matter what you do, he's always going to be the least interesting, the most boring, all of that stuff. They're a lost cause anyway, and they're not going to be behind anything that has him as the star, especially over Hal Jordan. So should you even bother doing anything for him if you're doing John Stewart? That's a question. I'll think more about it in the future. But why don't we talk about that another time? And thanks for joining me while I was, working on my comic again. Please pick up Zatswan in the link in the description on Amazon.com. Again, only $2.99 for the digital version. And if you do, leave me a review. That helps people find the book. And it's good for me to know just what, you guys think about the work I'm doing. I'm interested in hearing that, so I can, double down on the strengths that you like, or maybe I can consider adjusting things here or there if there's something, I'm just open to hearing the feedback. All right, everybody, stay tuned for more content, and be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you again very soon.